Good afternoon, everyone. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Ways and Means Committee. John Quincy, Chair, and joined by Council Members Yang, Palamasano, Council Vice President Glidden, Council Members Bender and Johnson. We have a relatively brief agenda today. It seems we have 21 items all on our consent agenda, so we'll be moving forward with those items. And also have a little heads up for my colleagues. There's an RCA at your positions there that'll talk about a application for a U.S. Department of Transportation Smart City Challenge Grant application. So we'll take that up as a item at the conclusion of our consent agenda. So we have from the Attorney's Office a legal settlement lawsuit, City of Minneapolis versus Ryan Companies, and a grant contracts and appropriation of funds received from the Byrne Criminal Justice Innovation Program grant. The Communications Departments bring forward one item. It's a donation of billboard display from Clear Channel Outdoor. The Convention Center brings forward a contract for Creative City Challenge Art Competition Project. Finance and Property Services offers the fourth quarter 2015 gift acceptance resolution of those donations. Our Human Resources Department brings forward a contract with Proceritips for employee engagement survey and related services. Information Technology Department has three items. One is an IT gift acceptance for a March 2016 conference expense, a contract amendment with IBM for the IOP software, and a contract amendment with Vergent Americas for the 311 login system support. From the Community Development and Regulatory Services Committee, we have a grant acceptance from the Metropolitan Council Livable Communities Local Housing Incentive Account for the City of Lakes Community Land Trust and Marshall Flats programs. We have a grant acceptance from Metropolitan Council Livable Communities Demonstration Account for Transit-Oriented Development Project. We have the Downtown East Commons additional construction acceptance of authorizes one or more additional amendments to existing agreements with Ryan Companies and First American Title Insurance for construction, additional enhancements to the Commons project. This is also from the Health, Environment, and Community Engagement Committee. This item number 13 is something we're actually going to take action here to postpone. We could postpone it to a time certain of February 8th, but I think we'll just list this on the agenda for future as postponed. Is the ordinance replacement animal care and control and regulatory ordinance was not taken up at this morning's committee or this week's committee. We have a grant from Minnesota Department of Health for federal home visiting funds, a contract with Hennepin County for SHIP funding, license agreement with Minneapolis Public Schools for use space. It's a 10-year license. Contract with Omada for online diabetes education. From Public Safety, Civil Rights, and Emergency Management Committee, we have the Bomb Detection Services for 2015 Viking football games contract amendment with the University of Minnesota. We won't talk about how that game turned out. From the Transportation and Public Works Committee, this is the 38th Street East reconstruction, approval of the assessment, bid for Hennepin-Lindale Avenue reconstruction, and a bid for small diameter sanitary sewer cleaning. Let's see what else I've got here. Just a little out of order in my pages, I'm sorry. Does that cover all of the consent items, the 21 items? Get it right. Any questions on any of those items? Not seeing any for those. I'll move the consent agenda with the noted exception of being item number 13 for being postponed. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Those items carry, and one item is postponed. And we can take up the new item, which is from Public Works Department. I think Mr. Wirchus will be able to help us walk through this RCA for explanation about why we're looking at this at this time frame. So, Mr. Wirchus, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. John Wirtjes, Director of Traffic and Parking Services. Before you this afternoon, we have a item related to the U.S. Department of Transportation and their Smart City Challenge. I've got a few slides here outlining what the Smart City Challenge is about. I guess first of all, it's open to medium-sized cities. In the initial part of the application process, we need to submit something by February 4th. The US DOT is going to select 5 finalists where they will award a $100,000 grant, which will then allow those 5 finalists to further develop their proposal towards a $40 million grant award potential, plus some other potential private vendor partners as well along with the project. As I mentioned, the deadline is February 4th. US DOT is expecting to make a selection by March for the 5 awardees, finalists, and then anticipated that somewhere in the May-June time period is when we would hear about the finalist of the 5.
Excuse me, Mr. Wirtjes.
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering if this particular grant would be, if the city would be prioritized because of our promise zone designation for this particular grant. Do you know that?
Mr. Chair and Councilmember Johnson, I don't believe that the US DOT has highlighted promise zone as a criteria which they're gauging that. However, throughout the application, I think there is synergies related to how you are bringing other partners and solving your challenges related to your region or your city specifically in moving forward. I do know that the federal government throughout a number of their sectors, whether it be housing or others, they've issued similar smart city challenges. This one happens to be a US DOT-led effort.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. So the focus here that US DOT has put on it relative to goals is safety, mobility, and addressing climate change. USD has further elaborated, and this is really the nuts of and the details related to the submittal area that they're really looking for, these vision elements. While these bullet points are fairly short and brief, there are volumes of information about what they mean related to each one of these on their website, and their interest is to prioritize the top third. They've got a second priority in the middle third, and then lower priority lower in the page. And so those are the focus areas and elements that they would like the proposers to respond with their in details in their proposal. To date, I've been working, Mr. Cockey's been there, Peter Wagenius has been at the table, and Nathan Koster from our Transportation Planning and Programming area of Public Works has been meeting with a variety of agency and nonprofits and the University of Minnesota relative to how we maybe can structure a proposal for our city. The group has initially identified the proposal area to be along the Green Line. We think there's synergies between it and the transit component that appears to be an opportunity that we might be able to discuss and present in our proposal. The next steps relative to this is we need to work over the next week here and get the proposal materials and application put together. It's approximately a 30-page proposal. We are in the process right now of seeking letters of support from partners. And then if we get selected as one of the 5, we'll continue the dialogue and bring in others as we need to grow and improve our proposal. So today, Mr. Chair, the 2 action items that we're seeking are to approve the application to be submitted to the US DOT. And then the second is McKnight Foundation has agreed to provide us some funding for our consultant assistance that we have engaged AECOM on. in order to bring forth this proposal. So we need to accept their funds and get into an agreement with them on that.
So thank you very much, Mr. Wirtjes. Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for allowing this to be walked on to today's agenda. I was happy to learn about this effort just a couple of weeks ago. I appreciate the time and the energy immediately invested by you, by our intergovernmental partners, and generously by the McKnight Foundation. I know that we need the quick turnaround here, and I can't help but notice how well this seems to address things that are important to us that we articulate as our values: safety, mobility, climate change. So I would gladly move this forward. I'd like to move this motion, and I don't know if my colleagues have any other questions about it.
Sure. Are there any questions for Councilmember Palmisano? Looks like Councilmember Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is really exciting, and the 12, vision elements, I think, cover a lot of ground, and $40 million is a kind of exciting amount of money to think about being able to spend in this way. Could you talk more, though, about how, it just seems like there's so much potential for areas of focus. I see the geographic area, which brings to mind some specific things that we've been working on as a city through our adopted policies. But could you talk more about the next steps here of how we go from this to a more detailed proposal for that first phase?
Mr. Chair and Councilmember Bender, so I can understand your question correctly, you mean after we do the submittal, what happens between, if we're selected from the 5, or are you talking between now and next week?
I wouldn't mind some more detail about what you think will go in the proposal next week. But perhaps there isn't a lot of details, so if not, then from there, I guess, would be the next phase.
Mr. Chair and Councilmember Bender, the details are still being fleshed out over this next week. It's been a race to the finish. I've brought up the vision element slide again. I really want to note that the USDOT has put strong focus on the first 3, the urban automation, connected vehicles, and sensor-based infrastructure. And so those are really their highest priority, and they've been clear about that in their webinars and other things online. That doesn't mean that the remaining 9 are less important. They're just stressing those, and they're trying to get everybody to touch every one of these and submit on all of them. And that's a difficult challenge. And so that's why we're kind of trying to put together a partnership that can say, how can we blend some of those items together? And as we look forward into a lot of these things that will be happening to us, whether we are at the table or others are at the table bringing some of this technology and change and transportation to us.
Mr. Chair, if I may just make a quick comment. It seems like the geographic area that we've chosen really highlights areas where we have done a lot of good work on integrated transportation and land use, where there's a lot of transit investment, where there's good existing and high potential for future bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. So it seems like it really lends itself to a real multimodal emphasis. Can you talk more about that and how we might see all of the different modes, certainly vehicles, personal vehicles, but all of those other modes showing up within our application?
Mr. Chair and Councilmember Bender, I think that's exactly why we picked this corridor, because there is a lot going on, not only from the transportation element, but also from the land use elements and the diverse communities and businesses that are up and down this corridor. Likewise, we want to leverage the assets that we've already, both federal and local, that we've put into this corridor, that being the Green Line, as well as other future elements that we will be going in this area. And so there is a really multimodal intention to pick this corridor.
Great, thank you.
Thanks very much. Any further questions or comments on the motion? Not seeing any. All those in favor of Councilmember Palmisano's motion to approve the application submittal and acceptance of the funds from McKnight, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That item carries. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you.
You bet. Seeing no further business before this committee, we are adjourned.